Okay. Scott Cerasale is our speaker this morning, and I met Scott, a couple years ago, and he was helping out with a family camp out or youth camp out that I was planning. And I really learned, what the true definition, I think, from Scott is of servant leader. Okay, this is a man that just does a bunch of stuff in the church and at work and at home, and he's, very quietly, got his fingers in a lot of different things around here. And so my wife and kids and I had the privilege to go over to their house for the boat parade, Christmas boat parade last year in December, right before Christmas. And we just had a great time, and they invited us over, and we watched, got a chance to see their family in action, and Scott and Anthony frequent a fishing seminar that we do at my store. And anyway, just been neat to see a little visibility into his family and what, he and Karen have been up to. Well, anyway, a few days later, we got this really tragic news, but I'm going to let Scott tell us all about it, okay?
Good morning, gentlemen, and hopefully I'll get through this. Paul's been asking me to do this for a couple months now, and it's been, no, I'm not ready to do it yet. I'm not to the point where I can stand up and talk about it. Hopefully today is the day. Just a quick prayer before I get started for everybody. Lord, guide my words, make them yours. Bring to each individual here in the room something special from it. Let them hear what it is that your words are saying to them in their heart, so that my words can have the greatest effect for your kingdom and for your glory. Amen. December 26th, 2013 is a day I'll never forget. Excuse me. It's the day that God saved my son's life. There was, just give you a little background on Anthony, and I make no bones about it. I've told him many times. Karen and I didn't plan him. As a matter of fact, he shouldn't be here. But obviously, it's one of those things, man plans and God laughs, because he is here. And he, through his life, prior to being born, overcame several things that could have prevented him from arriving here on earth. But he overcame the adversity. So over the years, I've developed this. It came to me during prayer time one day. I don't know, maybe he was a year old at that point. But I found Anthony's verse in the Bible. John 15, verse 16. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you to go forth and bear fruit that will last. Then the Father will give you whatever you ask in my name. That's Jesus speaking. And since that came to me, I've been telling him that's his verse. And I don't know what his fruit's going to be. I've always told him, I don't know what his fruit's going to be. It's his job to figure that out. His job to pray about it and determine what God's plan is for his life. So, 26th of December, relatively normal day after Christmas. My family, all of us are getting ready. We're going to be flying out the next morning to visit my brother for a few days in California. He had gotten married back in early November, and we were flying out to go to his wedding celebration. I won't call it a reception because it wasn't right afterwards, but wedding celebration at any rate. Anthony went and spent some time. He works part-time for this guy working on helping him refurb his sailboat. And Anthony spent a considerable amount of time that day working for Spencer, refurbing the sailboat, painting or doing whatever it was he was doing that day. And he came home and decided he hadn't had enough exercise for the day. He needed to go out for a run. So he went out for a run. We were leaving very early the next morning, so we were trying to get everything done that night. Karen's, I think, ironing clothes, getting them ready to go on the plane. Kendra's packing her bag, and I'm in the kitchen doing dinner dishes, or doing dishes. Maybe they weren't dinner, but anyway, doing dishes at any rate. And we're out, with the three of us are doing that and working around the house while Anthony's out for his run, and then suddenly we realized, he's been gone a long time. He's a little overdue. And I wonder if something's wrong, or is he out goofing off with one of his friends? Did he run into one of his friends and decide to detour on his route home to go do something else with them? We didn't really know. So we waited a little while, still nothing going on. In the meantime, I hear a helicopter fly over the house, and I'm thinking, that's life flight. Why are they going over so low over my house? Didn't think any more of it, went right back to doing the dishes. A few more minutes pass, and we realize he's still not here, so Karen says it's time to go look for him. Something's not right here, it's time to go look for him. So she and Kendra get into her car and start driving around looking for him. And unfortunately, I don't remember all the details, but basically she went up Berkeley and saw that went up Berkeley toward A1A and saw there was an accident there, so just turned real quick and went south looking for Anthony, trying to figure out, going to go hit some of his favorite hot spots, some of his buddies' houses and what have you, to see where he's been. She gets down the road a little ways and realizes that was not the right thing to do, and turns around and goes back to the accident scene. And someday we'll have Karen fill in the details on this, but basically she walked up to the accident scene and said, "Hey, was there a young man involved in this accident?" And unfortunately, the answer was yes. So, I don't have all the details here of what happened before I got the phone call, but I get a phone call from Karen. Since they left and we weren't sure where Anthony was, I said, okay, well, I'll go get my boots on and change into my long pants, and I'll go jump on the motorcycle, and I'll go check some of the other places that he may be. And so I'm in the middle of getting my boots on when I get a phone call from Karen. Anthony's been involved in an accident. Anthony's been in an accident. He's on his way to the ER. They life flighted him to the ER. Heard the helicopter go over, and didn't even think anything of it. Phone call was amazingly stoic, amazingly direct. I'm not really sure how Karen held it together that well. But at this point, I'm going, wow, at that point I was going, I'm not really sure how she held it together that well. So I jump in the van at this point, since I don't need the motorcycle. I jump on the van and I drive up there to park the car and get out, and Kendra greets me just crying her eyes out. Kendra comes walking toward me crying her eyes out, and Karen's talking to the officers. Conversation back and forth and what have you. We find out that he was conscious when he was loaded on the ambulance, and that's all the officer can tell us at this point. So we had several other conversations with the officer, got the paper, got minimum information to him so that they would be able to fill out their report. They knew what was going on, who he was, got to fill out his report. And then we went to leave for the hospital. I turned to Karen and says, "You want me to drive?" And she says, "No, I need to drive." And the officer says something to the effect of, "Are you sure you're ready to drive?" And she says, "Yes, but and I will be fine driving. I'm perfectly okay, but don't expect me to do the speed limit." Even in that scenario, we have humor. The ride to the ER was relatively quiet. We're all in Karen's car going to the ER, and we start making phone calls. I think Karen was calling. We had like all three phones in the car working at the same time, calling different people. First phone call was to Karen's sister Peggy, who's a registered nurse with Health First, and she works over at the same-day surgery center, but she ran the ER at Holmes for many years. So Karen calls her and says, "Hey, here's the situation. Get there now, please." Peggy drops everything, as you might expect, and runs to the hospital. Well, I've got Michael on the phone. I think I called Michael, Pastor Michael. I don't remember. Like I said, details escape me at this point just because there's so many of them, and we were kind of harried at the time, to say the least. What little time was not spent on the phone while on their way to the hospital was spent praying. Praying for Anthony's safety, praying for our safety getting there. It was just, the prayer started immediately, and that's what the whole rest of the evening went. We arrived at the ER, and that was really the beginning of God's people reaching out to Anthony and to our family. And that's one of the biggest points I want to make this morning, is that we would never have gotten through this without the support of this church, of our family, of our friends. It's been amazing. The people of God stepped up and helped. Even those people who really aren't of God, but are of that nature, stepped up and helped over the course of the next few months. It's just really been phenomenal to see all those different people showing up in our lives. Some who've become very, very close because of this afterwards. Anyway, at the ER, we get there. Karen's sister's already there. She comes out and briefs us a little bit and says they'll have him ready for you to come in a few minutes. They're still doing some procedures on him. We went back there, and once we finally were able to go back to the ER room and see him, I don't even know what they call those rooms, back to the ER to see him. That was, to say the least, heart-wrenching. To see him laying there in the bed, bruised, battered, hooked up to all these machines. They got wires on him. They've got hoses in him. They've got a tube in him to help him breathe. And the hospital staff was not very optimistic, especially the neurosurgeon who came in, because Anthony did have a brain injury in the process of this. And unfortunately, when he hit the ground, hit it on his head. But basically, they said you make it through the next 48 hours. If he makes it through the next 48 hours, that'll be the turning point. Again, the prayers. Please, Lord, you've got something special in mind for him. I know that you would not have given him this much help already to take him away from us at this point. So let's move on to get him healthy. Help him recover, Lord, please. Give him the strength he needs, give the doctors the information they need to be able to help him recover. To back up to people just for a minute, we find out later, many weeks later, that the first person on the scene at the accident was what I will call a second-level friend, a friend of a friend, someone we didn't know, but was like the next second car in line at the accident and immediately went up and prayed over Anthony. While he's laying there in the road, started praying for him. And like I said, we didn't find out for a couple of weeks that the connection there between a friend of ours and this woman who did the praying. The next person on the scene was an off-duty EMT at Patrick Air Force Base, and started working on him immediately before the ambulance even got there. The ambulance gets there, 62 from South Patrick Shores here, gets there and immediately calls Life Flight. Doesn't even hesitate. This guy's going to need it. Immediately calls Life Flight in. No hesitation. Just jump on the situation and go. Which, of course, is what they're trained to do. It's a good thing, because that's another thing that helped save his life. The people. So we're in the ER with Anthony, and we didn't have a whole lot else to do at that moment. We just kind of sat around waiting for news and what have you. Pastor Michael showed up, and we briefed him on the scenario, and then we went to the chapel to pray. I don't know if you realize it or not, but the ER has a very nice little chapel in the back. Beautiful stained glass, very quiet, very peaceful area. And we spent a considerable amount of time praying back there with with Pastor Michael before they moved him from the ER up to the hospital ward. I won't give you a whole lot of detail about injuries and what have you, but the thing I'd like to point out here is, again, the people. Over the next few weeks in the hospital, well, almost immediately, I guess I should say, we kind of commandeered one of the waiting rooms on the floor where Anthony was, in the ICU. It was a surgical, well, it was the ICU. I don't remember whether it was surgical or which one, but we kind of took over the waiting room, literally. We had a sign on the door that said Anthony's waiting room. And people were coming in, like the next morning somebody comes in and starts rearranging all the furniture so that it's more conducive to having all the people there. We've got a refrigerator shows up. We didn't have a microwave. I'm surprised no one, but I think people offered to bring a microwave and we said, no, thank you. But we had a refrigerator there. We had somebody brought in a rack of shelves so we could keep track of things because people were bringing food in, non-perishable food. We didn't have room for it, so somebody brought in a set of plastic shelves, and we put it in the corner and set the food on it for everybody to munch on while they were there. Just people coming out of the woodwork, people that I barely knew, people that I've known for years. One person in particular who unfortunately didn't make it this morning, but Scott Wood-Ivers, jumped on the scenario, and he and Kendra, my daughter Kendra, built Anthony his own Facebook page just for the prayer, just for this injury. We call it Anthony's prayer page for people to go in and offer prayers for Anthony's recovery. So the 26th was a Thursday. The prayer page, the Facebook page, the social media has blown up. And Scott Wood and several other people have planned a prayer vigil for Anthony for Saturday morning at Oars and Paddles down here, where, of course, that's got another part of that's a big part of our life because Anthony's a crew on the crew team there, and hundreds of people show up. We've got people that still I have no clue who they are. There's hundreds and hundreds of people showed up to be there for Anthony's prayer vigil. People I've never met, people that just friends of friends of friends, and it's just amazing, all the people that showed up. We had a firefighter, we don't even know who he was, but a firefighter walked up to Kendra and said, "Are you Anthony's sister?" And she said, "Yes." And he handed her a Publix gift card and said, "Here, this is from the firefighters, Brevard County firefighters. This is to make sure that there's food in the house for the family while all this is going on." He disappears. I have no clue who he is. Can't write a note and say thank you or anything, but it's just people coming out like that from the woodworks. Through all this, aside from the people, there's the prayers. That's the two things that got Karen and I through this: the people and the prayers. It was funny because maybe I shouldn't say funny, but interesting. Sometime in the first couple weeks, my brother lives in California. He couldn't come immediately because of the fact that he was having his wedding celebration 2 days later. But that afternoon, the next morning after the celebration was over, he's on a plane out to see us. And he comes out, and he was out almost every weekend there for a little while, flying out from California to visit, I shouldn't say to visit, but to be at us in the hospital with Anthony. And on one of his visits, he made the comment to me, and I don't have an exactly the words, but something to the effect of, if this had to happen to someone, you and Karen are probably the best ones for it to happen to. And I kind of went, what? Knowing my brother, I was sure that he meant it as a positive observation. But it really threw me there for a minute or two. Matter of fact, for several days it threw me. I said, "Stephen, I really don't know what you mean by that. And I'm not sure I agree with it, but I know you mean it positively, so I guess thank you." I really didn't know. But upon reflection on that, over the next few days, maybe even weeks, I asked myself, even though I don't necessarily agree with him, why did he say that? What made him say that? And I started thinking about it. And I said, what characteristics do Karen and I have that makes that a true statement? And it really, what I believe it comes down to is our faith in God, that God will get us through. And the prayers, I mean, when things got tough, it's the prayers that matter. One day, Anthony was having a bad day. He needed to be rushed down to the OR for a procedure. And it was touch and go there at that point in time. That was still in the first 48 hours, and he was, I don't remember exactly what the issue was, but he had to be rushed to the ER. We've got 65 people in the waiting room. And they all want to, do what they can to help. So I asked one of the people that were there that was with Karen and I said, go back to the waiting room, please. Tell them that Anthony's coming out to be rushed to the OR for a procedure. I want you guys all standing there in the hallway praying for him. Or excuse me, I didn't say that. I said, I just want you all praying for him as right now. Start praying and don't stop until at least he's in the OR. So Karen and I are going with the gurney up down the hall, and we get down the hall, and there it is, 65 people lined up on the hallway, all praying as we wheeled Anthony past. So back to Stephen's comment for a minute. It's the prayers that make the difference. It's the belief, it's the faith that make the difference, I think. Psalm 62, verses 5 through 8 and 11 and 12. Yes, my soul I think that's a typo, I'm sorry. My soul finds rest in God. My hope comes from him. Truly, he is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will not be shaken. My salvation and my honor depend on God. He is my mighty rock, my refuge. Trust in him at all times, you people. Pour out your hearts to him, for God is our refuge. One thing God has spoken, two things I have heard. Power belongs to you, God, and with you, the Lord, is unfailing love, and you reward everyone according to what they have done. I'm not quite sure yet what verse 12 has to do with. I'm sure I'll find out, because this particular psalm came to me one morning in my quiet time as being something I should read for this breakfast this morning. But the big thing is it gave me the guidance it showed me what I needed to say to you guys this morning, that prayer makes the difference, faith makes the difference. It's what got us through, it's what got Anthony through, and it's still, to this day, it's, Anthony still has issues. He's certainly not perfect. And every day we pray for him still, because even if it hadn't been for the accident, we'd be praying for him every day, because that's just what needs to be done. Prayer is the key. It's the prayer, it's the faith, it is God's hand that brought our boy back to us, that saved his life. There's a lot of details that I don't want to go into this morning, can't go into, but don't need to go into either, because that's the true essence of what made this crisis bearable, is that our prayers, our faith, and the family of God, the people of God coming together to help us, to help strengthen our faith, to help strengthen Anthony, to help him heal. Jump back to the prayer vigil for a minute. Unfortunately, skipped one of my notes here, but while the prayer vigil is going on, I think we decided there were over 250 people at the prayer vigil. I don't remember the exact number now. I probably got it written down somewhere in my notes, but Karen and I didn't go. We didn't feel like, Karen wasn't going to leave Anthony's side, didn't leave Anthony's side for 6 weeks, except for one night to go home and shower. Not that she didn't shower for 6 weeks. She did do that. They had, fortunately, with our connections in the hospital and what have you, she was able to go shower in the employees area at the hospital. But it took her that long before it took 4 weeks basically before she was ready to leave the hospital, even for the night. And only then, because her brother stepped up, her brother and sister-in-law stepped up and said, "We'll sit with Anthony all night. I'll sleep in his room for you tonight. You don't need to." So we convinced her to go home and have a nice night's sleep in her own bed. And she actually did sleep fairly well that night. But anyway, during the prayer vigil, 200 plus people praying for him. People I'll never see again, people I never met, but people I thank God for. Karen and I didn't go to the prayer vigil. We stayed up in the room along with 2 other friends. And the 4 of us stood and prayed over Anthony at the same time that the 250 or so were praying for him at the prayer vigil. And the power of that was amazing. You could feel the power in the room. You could feel the hand of God on Anthony and on the situation in general. One of the things that I regularly read to myself in my morning prayer time, because I think it's so important, is a passage, Psalms 46:10. "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth." I hope what I've said today does do just that, exalts God. I like to sit down and, like I said, in the morning prayer time and quiet time and things like this just pop in, God sent. I shouldn't say just pop in, they're God sent. But I just want to again say thank you to all you men here that prayed for me. Thank you to the whole church. Thank you to all the friends that prayed for Anthony and his situation. Because without the friends and without God, we would not have gotten through this. One more commentary. Our lives are filled with trials. The only way to handle them is through God. And the only way to God is through prayer. Thank you, gentlemen, for everything you did for us. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being men of God. That wasn't too bad.
Wait a minute. Karen, come here. Just stand up over there.
My wife snuck in the back door.
Karen's been over here listening. Anthony's here. Let's just give him a round of applause.